Good evening, everyone. My name is Terri Crawford, and welcome to Go Vote Omaha. I am a co-policy director with the League of Women Voters, and tonight we are very honored to have our guest, Dr. Cynthia Robinson. As you all know, February is Black History Month, so in honor of Black History Month, we will be having a conversation tonight regarding systemic racism in Omaha, Nebraska. Dr. Cynthia Robinson is Chair and Associate Professor at the University of Nebraska in Omaha in the Department of Black Studies. So at this time, welcome Dr. Robinson, and thank you so much for allowing us to have this conversation tonight.
It's my honor.
Now, as you know, Black History Month, which is the shortest month of the year, but Black History really is 365 days of the year. One of the conversations we like to talk about is I know you have a specialty in race, ethnicity, and identity. Talk a little bit about your dissertation and then also how race, ethnicity, and identity has contributed to or helped explain, anyway, systemic racism.
So my course that you're talking about, a course that I developed called Communicating Race, Ethnicity, and Identity that I actually will be teaching this summer. This course is cross-listed with communication. I am also in the School of Communication. My dissertation research dealt with the impact of race on how we see Black female beauty. So specifically dealing with Black female skin color and hairstyles as beauty and the impact of race on that, on how we see that. I got involved in race. Actually, my study of race is how I got into Black studies. When I was about 21, 22 years old, a little over 30 years ago, I asked myself the question, why don't white people like Black people? I just wanted to know that. And in answering and trying to find that out, I just started reading Black history. And so the answer to that is race and racism. And so that has just kind of been my trajectory in Black studies.
Okay. I am glad you mentioned beauty and standards of beauty as it relates to Black women. Recently in Nebraska, there was an introduction of a bill, LB 1060, that dealt with hair texture. So one of the things that was discussed regarding LB 1060 was whether or not texture of hair, locks, braids, and other types of natural hairstyles, whether or not that should be included in the definition of what a protected class is in Nebraska. So part of the conversation regarding that bill and also standards of beauty in Nebraska and other places across the country had to do with policing of our hair and why we are still having that conversation in 2020. Can you talk some about that?
And the reason why we're having that conversation in 2020 is because of race and racism. So this is something that applies specifically to people with African ancestry. Our hair texture is our African ancestry, and hair is a racial identifier second only to skin color. And in fact, some research suggests it's a stronger racial identifier over skin color. So your hair will tell what you are. And so that's the first thing. So it's race. The second thing is whiteness is normalized. And so white hairstyles, whatever is normal for whiteness, that is normalized. Cross country, cross communities, in corporations. And so why do you need to wear your hair in braids? I don't understand it. Why do you need to wear your hair like this? Why do you need to wear locks? Why do you need to wear an afro or anything, straighten your hair? What is the problem? That's, again, race. And if you don't have African ancestry, first of all, if you don't have those hair issues, you don't understand it.
Part of the conversation during the introduction of the bill and in groups that I've been involved with is to have that discussion regarding how that plays out in the media. There was, of course, a young man that was from New Jersey, I believe, that was requested to either forfeit his wrestling match or cut his locks. It played out on national TV that the young man, who was a teenager, had to have his hair cut chopped basically with a pair of scissors by one of his coaches who was a white female. I was livid when I had to sit and watch that, and there's been lots of discussions around that incident and several other incidents. There's another young man out of Texas right now who was told by his administrators at his school that he cannot graduate unless he cuts his locks that he's been growing for many, many years. So this conversation continues to kind of bubble up and bubble over, and many of the, I guess, some of the pushback that we've had about it is why is this an issue that you and I both can understand, but it seems to be an issue that is not explainable to non-Black people. So talk some about how that plays out in the classroom and also how it plays out in the community.
It's really like, why does it have to be explained? That's really the bigger issue. Why does it have to be explained? And the reason it has to be explained is because of racism. So you don't understand African American cultural things, you don't understand the swag, you don't understand hairstyles, you don't understand different things. Okay, that's your problem. The overarching issue for us is people in charge and making policies that don't understand this. And so really a lot of white men, really frankly old white people who don't get it. Mm-hmm. And they are the ones in charge of policy making. And so this is why, there was a law passed in New York and in California. You can't discriminate on people's hairstyles now in California and in New York. And if you watch Joy Ann Reid, A.M. Joy, she went from wearing this weird little wig that didn't ever work for her. And then now she wears these nice natural styles, braids that work for her. Hairstyles they're like personality. You should be able to wear the hairstyle that fits your personality. Instead of the hairstyle that fits my personality, what I'm comfortable with. So okay. I want to say this too. I asked my students this one time, I said, imagine if white females had to wear Afro puffs. And I asked white girls in my class, what would you do? Afro puffs is the norm. You have to wear Afro puffs. Now it is easier for us to wear Afro puffs. Sure. Just throw it up, right? What would you have to do? Oh, a lot of hairspray, a lot of brushing, yes. And it's not natural, and it wouldn't work. It would not work. It wouldn't be good. It wouldn't be comfortable. You'd have to spend a ton of money and a ton of time, things you couldn't do. You can't swim. Don't you mess up those Afro puffs.
Right.
Exercising is going to mess up your hair. Things we go through all the time.
Recently, as it relates to the community and having those conversations on a broader scale, particularly in the media, we had a commemoration for Will Brown. Talk some about the organizations that were involved in that, and I know you in Department of Black Studies were in particular involved, and talk some about that powerful speech that you gave on the courthouse steps. Well, I was approached by Preston Love, who is one of our adjunct professors in Black Studies, and also Preston Love in the community, and also Franklin Thompson, who is a professor in the College of Education, longtime professor, and also in the Vicki Young, but I was approached by Franklin Thompson, and I was approached by Preston Love. And so then I became part of this committee to commemorate Red Summer. And of course, we are known for Will Brown. So they said, Cynthia, just in 5 to 7 minutes, tell what led up to the Will Brown lynching, describe it a little bit, and talk about the impact of Will Brown. So on the courthouse steps, the speech I gave, really what led up to the Will Brown lynching, white supremacy. Talked about Will Brown, just the horrific things that happened to him because it could happen to him. The fact of the matter was he was accused of raping someone who was not raped and robbing someone who was not robbed, and everybody knew everybody, and he was picked and chosen. And then
cut up and all kinds of horrific things that you wouldn't even think that people could do to another human being. And so the connection I made is that lynching was law enforcement. So Will Brown is just one of the famous cases that we know, and this is why I don't want us to, people were talking about we should make it Will Brown Day. No, this is really not about Will Brown, it's about all, this happened to lots and lots and lots of people. Will Brown was one of the more famous cases that we know of here in Omaha. But I connected it also to police brutality, because lynching was law enforcement.
Sure.
And so any ordinary, regular white person could accuse a black person of a crime, and just regular things, and then you could get lynched for that. So why my speech became what my speech became is because I thought about my great-grandmother who raised me, born in 1904, and I thought about things she went through because of systemic racism. And I thought I could give this speech. She couldn't, but I can give this speech. And so that's why I gave the kind of speech I gave, plus I teach public speaking, so that's what happens when you merge public speaking and Black studies.
So talk some about his story for those that are viewing as to exactly what happened with Will Brown and how that played out in the media at that time and why the commemoration was so important to do in September of 2019.
So September 28th, 1919, a white female and her boyfriend said that she was raped and that he was robbed. And they said it was Will Brown that did it. And it really wasn't, and everyone knew it. But so then her brother led a posse, supposedly, and went and got Will Brown and with this posse, and then they put him in jail, and then of course the mob comes and all of this, and they got him out, and really, strangled him, stabbed him, shot him, chopped him up, hung him up and set him on fire and did all of these things to him. And again, the reason why this was done, supposedly the crime was against white womanhood. The scary white supremacy created a black beast, and I said this in my speech. White supremacy created a black beast, then white supremacy created fear around that black beast, and then white supremacy used lynchings as justifiable homicide as a way of dealing with that fear, because lynching was law enforcement. And so again, this was done because it could be done.
Okay. I'm glad you mentioned the whole thing about lynching, because recently on the federal level, they have decided to move forward with making lynching a federal crime. So it could be treated the same way any other hate crime could be treated. That didn't happen for Will Brown, but luckily something like that is happening for us in 2020. Talk some about how you perceive that something like that would have affected the family of a Will Brown.
Well, so it's called the Emmett Till Antilynching Bill. I keep wanting to be impressed with it. I do. I keep wanting to be impressed with an anti-lynching bill in 2020. But then I remember who's getting lynched today. So I say that we should have had police killing unarmed black people. That should have been in there. Instead of, we're focusing on something that's not happening anymore. And so, yeah, it's kind of weird for me and kind of problematic. I really wasn't impressed with it.
So do you look at it as maybe an empty gesture for something that no longer occurs? When
Absolutely. And we ought to take on policing, which again, tie lynching to that. That is what lynching was. It was law enforcement. It's just you didn't have to have a badge to do it. But today, people with a badge and a gun can shoot you accidentally because they are afraid of you. You have not committed any crime. You haven't done anything wrong. They stopped you because they could, racially profiled you, asked you for your driver's license. You reach for your license and get shot because they are afraid of you. That should have been included in the anti-lynching bill. Historically, lynchings were done in the same manner like policing is done. You have done something that I think is a crime. And the crime could just be walking while black, driving while black, being black. A guy was lynched because he's running to catch a train and brushed up against a white female, just accidentally brushed up against her. She cried rape. He was lynched. An old black man was lynched walking with his dog, came across a group of white guys, and they said he wasn't polite enough. They lynched him and his dog. He was like 80 years old.
Sure.
So these things were done as those things are not being done today. But police brutality is, and I think we should take that on and quit being afraid.
Okay. Talk some, if you will, about the Malcolm X Festival and how we address systemic racism in some of the workshops and some of the offerings that we've had, not just this year, but over the years, and how that helps us have these conversations with community allies and community partners.
So the Malcolm X Festival was began in, I want to say, 2001. Dr. Robert Chrisman came in from California to be chair of the Department of Black Studies. And when he got here, he's like, hey, this is the birthplace of Malcolm X. He said he created the festival, Malcolm X Festival, because he wanted to celebrate the community that produced parents that produced a Malcolm X. And so that is how the Malcolm X Festival began. And we just, we have different themes, different years. This year our theme is We the People. The festival actually begins April 13th on UNO's campus, but we are also partnering with, or we are co-sponsoring with the Malcolm X Memorial Foundation, and they are bringing Bobby Seale April 11th. So the festival will be starting there. And then April 11th, that's on a Saturday, and then we go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And so we'll be having a schedule pretty soon on our Facebook page about all the different events. But again, our theme is We the People, and this is an opportunity to bring the university to the community, bring the community to the university, and to bring both to Black Studies.
Okay. Talk some, if you will, about the importance of Bobby Seale coming to Omaha, Nebraska, the birthplace of Malcolm X, and also how it relates to our Omaha 2, our political prisoners that were Black Panthers themselves.
Yes. Bobby Seale, I know he's going to talk a lot about that. I'm pretty sure he's going to talk a lot about that. So again, the Malcolm X Foundation is bringing him. And what Malcolm X was about, if nothing else, was truth. He was about truth, and he was about Black people. And he was about people knowing their history. He was about people understanding what's going on. And that's really, the Black Panthers, that's what they were about. Mondo Rice and Admiral Poindexter were arrested on false charges because they dared to call out white supremacy in Omaha, Nebraska. And they were arrested on those false charges for that. And so the Black Panther movement got caught up in all of that. I mean, you had Geronimo Pratt in California, who did 27 years, just calling out white supremacy, or as I would say, saying, ouch, that hurts. Don't do that anymore. Don't hurt me anymore. Don't hurt her. You know, it's okay. Like, we can communicate. We can be, no, you can't. You have to be neutralized. You got to be destroyed. You got to be killed, or you got to be put in prison.
I have found in attempting to have these conversations, particularly with millennials and a younger generation, because they don't have the real life experience with those periods with Malcolm X and the Civil Rights Movement and the Black Panthers. So the conversation has to be handled gingerly, I guess, when we're having these conversations with those that haven't really experienced it and really don't have that topic at the forefront of their conversations with their peers. So how are we doing that with that particular demographic, particularly on campus and also in communities, and how do we continue to do that, not just throughout the Malcolm X Festival, but on a continuous basis here in Omaha, Nebraska?
Well, one of the things that we're having, one of the panels, is our intergenerational discussion. Personally, I think that we have failed our young people, and I think they think that too. I think that when these great leaders like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King were killed, that the white supremacy, I call it out like that. I don't want to say the government, because it wasn't just the government, it's just this whole white supremacy thing. I don't want to say America, because again, it's just this whole white supremacy thing. That is what they wanted. They wanted the movement to stop with those people, and it kind of did. And so our young people see that. They see that. And to put that in context with the anti-lynching bill today, I bet a lot of young people are like, oh, Grandma, who's getting lynched? You know?
Right. There were several things that happened recently in the legislature, and I know we've had some conversations about it. It was raised by not only Kavanaugh but also Chambers that there was an incident at a Fremont school where the basketball team, mostly black females, not all, but predominantly black females, were there to play a basketball game, and they were called racial slurs, not only by other students, but also by some of the parents. And there's just been a pattern of things that have happened, and Justin Wayne also raised the issue on the floor of the legislature that this was not an isolated event, but we knew about it because it was in the Lincoln Journal-Star and several other publications. So how do we continue to have that conversation in a more contemporary form so that we do reach young people and others that are interested in maybe coming to an understanding as to how the structure still continues to have benefits for some and burdens for others?
So systemic racism, so race is the concept of whiteness, and that is what it is about. White is better and all of that. And then racism are the structures that hold that together. The book Sundown Town by James Loewen, he speaks a lot in this book about, and Sundown Towns is really about Fremont is a sundown town, so towns where black people are not allowed or whatever, but he really speaks a lot about post-Civil War. White people were taught that they were better and that they should not like black people. And this is how systemic racism perpetuates itself and keeps going on with itself, is because people are taught that. So we live in an age of Trump. We have a child, a grown man child in the White House that is allowed to bully and name call, and racism is cool, is good. You're supposed to support white supremacy. This is what we have from the White House. We live in one of the reddest states, one of the most conservative states in the country. So this is how this happens. These children are taught this. They are taught this. The parents it's okay. And quite frankly, everybody's comfortable with it. Who's doing it? This is how I want to live anyway. You know, go back to where you came from. Whiteness has taught, or white supremacy has taught white people that America is their country. The United States is their country. This belongs to us. And so you're not slaves anymore. You shouldn't be here. And you were only brought here to be slaves, and you're, inferior anyway. Don't even get on immigration and all of the rest of that. But this is really what the problem is, which is why I have decided that my life's work is to call out white supremacy. I'm going to stop not calling it out. We're about to get a 7-foot banner outside of the Department of Black Studies that says #Let's End Racism. When I have been talking to people on UNO's campus and leadership, and they have been saying, Cynthia, how can we get more black and brown faculty on campus? Let's end racism. That's what you have to do. So we have to call that out, and that is the problem. The ignorance that is allowed, the one that you're describing at a Fremont game, that's ignorance that's allowed. And the reason why that's allowed is because of racism. You just imagine if they weren't saying names racially things, if they were saying other things, religious things, or something, I don't know, calling out disabled people. Something that would make people be like, no, you can't do that,
Up in arms. They would be up in arms.
Yes.
If it were any other protected type of category.
Absolutely.
Other than race.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. Well, Dr. Robinson, I want to thank you so much for spending your time with us this evening to discuss this very important topic. Hopefully this is just an opportunity for us to open the door, but to continue to have the conversations within our classrooms, within our courtrooms, and within our community. I appreciate all you do for the community. We want to thank you again for being here. We are nonpartisan, and I want to make sure that I remind everyone of that, since you did bring up a political figure. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands.
I vote independent. I'm a registered independent. So,
right,
yeah.
that League of Women Voters is nonpartisan, but we do want to make sure that we continue to have important conversations so that people are involved in the political process, that they are involved in voting, and that we can continue to have conversations that are meaningful throughout our community. Thank you so much.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
If your vote, where's my camera, right here? If your vote doesn't matter, people wouldn't fight for it so much, so your vote matters. Vote, vote.
Dr. Robinson, thank you so much.
Thank you.